month of May is brought to you by Peak. Peak original equipment technology is formulated with the same corrosion-inhibiting technology that protected your vehicle when it left the factory. It provides excellent protection against rust and corrosion to all cooling system metals, including aluminum, and is fully compatible with other extended life coolants. With its line of premium 50/50 pre-diluted and concentrated coolant specifically designed to match the technology and color requirements of your specific vehicle, and color cues on the packaging and label in a list of covered vehicles make it easy to identify the right match for your vehicle. Find out more information about all Peak antifreeze and coolants at peakauto.com. And Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, the first dynamic competition for drag racing fans. Go to dragracebracketbonanza.com. It's free. When the fields are set on Saturday night at the Route 66 Nationals presented by Peak, pick all your round-by-round winners in all 4 pro categories. Sign up at dragracebracketbonanza.com at the link below. Well, after a wild and very, very long day here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we have finally finished the month of May and have reached our conclusion of the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. The only way I can describe how this race was this was vintage Indianapolis 500. This is what the 500 should be, a race of attrition, a race of endurance, where the best guys and women make it to the end of the race and duel it out for the last race. No gimmick, no pony show, just straight up, side-by-side racing. No red flags. We didn't have to wait for the clock to hit 8:15 for us to leave. We didn't have to wait for rain. We just had to wait about 4 hours, and then, man oh man, did they put on a show. I mean, we're going to go over the results, but, I mean, Josef Newgarden, what else can you say about him and how he's performed this month? Having to face the adversity of what has transpired within the last month with the push-to-pass penalty, with the mental toll that took on him. He was very open about it, and to now be rewarded with that after the poor results back at Barber in the Indy GP and qualifying, to come back here and win the 500 for a second year in a row. What a finish to this story.
Yeah, and this is something that Newgarden needed to vindicate what happened last year. There was controversy after last year. Some people thought Marcus Ericsson was the rightful winner. This year you can't say the same thing. And the other bright side for Josef Newgarden is they don't have push to pass on the super speedway, so that's not going to be a factor either. Josef earned this one. Team Penske earned this one this month. They were by far a step ahead of everybody else, and you know what? And even their affiliate team, AJ Foyt Racing, they were just a step above, and they absolutely deserved that one.
And at the same time, you have to feel for Pato O'Ward. This track knows how to rip your heart out. Same for Scott McLaughlin and Scott Dixon and so forth. Alexander Rossi. There are so many guys who had such good days here, especially Pato. The emotion pouring out of him after, the years where he comes here and wrecks out of the race and has to wonder about the what if, and then finally has it in his grasp, but then with 2 turns to go, just ripped straight out of his hands and having to watch the wind be taken away from him. This track giveth, but man oh man does it taketh away.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different storylines that led into this and that played out in that final 4, or 5, or top 5 finishers. I mean, Scott McLaughlin being able to vindicate everything that he's done in IndyCar and prove to the boss that he can win the big one, and he is a championship competitor. For Scott Dixon, get rid of that little curse that everyone says he has and get that second win. For Alexander Rossi to prove that 2016 wasn't a fluke and that he could win it on a non-fuel mileage-based race. For Pato O'Ward, for him to finally get the big one. So all of those storylines converged at one place at one time, and we saw Josef Newgarden come out the victor and vindicate everything. Everything.
Let's look straight into the notes or summary of the race. We were watching this from turn 3, so we don't exactly have the NBC broadcast, but from everything we saw, Kevin, I sat right next to you. What did you see out of this race?
Well, a couple of key storylines that we talked about on Carb Day. Weather, the big thing. Obviously we didn't get going until 4:15 p.m. local time. There's a question of would this become a timed race, because the absolute latest that they could run right now was 8:15. Now, luckily, we were a little bit away from that. We had a little bit of comfort zone. The other thing, reliability. And Honda proved pretty early on that reliability was their Achilles heel. Not only did they not have the performance, but they did not have the reliability. And we saw 3 of those Honda engines pop compared to 0 for Chevy. But let's get into the stuff that did transpire throughout the race. So We did have a crash on lap 1 between Pietro Fittipaldi, Marcus Ericsson, and Tom Blomqvist. You hate it for Blomqvist because this was his first ever attempt at the Indy 500, and it ends before turn 2. For Marcus Ericsson, it's a gut punch because he felt, at the end of last year's race that he was robbed. And then to have to go to a backup chassis after crashing, face the last row shootout, and then not make it to corner 2. That's a gut punch. And then Pietro, who was the most vocal about it, felt he was turned.
Absolutely. I mean, Tom Blomqvist alone, he was very much beating himself up in the post-race interview because of how that transpired. Marcus Ericsson as well, furious with how that happened, having to go through the pain of what it was bump day and then not even make it out of the second turn. I mean, what else can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, and this was the first lap crash since 2015 as well. So there was, first time in a long time that we've had that happen. And then we talked about the reliability issues for Honda. Marcus Armstrong, his motor let go on lap number 7 during that first caution period. And then not too long after, Catherine Legge's let go. So unfortunately for them, short days. Kyle Larson, the big name of the day. He ends up not racing in Charlotte. He comes here, he completes his first Indy 500. He led, albeit, to be fair, on strategy in the final 20 laps, but he was a little bit rough on the first restart. He lost quite a few positions. He had a pit lane speeding violation later on in the race that cost him a lap. So not a picture-perfect day for Kyle, but it was solid. He kept it straight and almost narrow.
Another thing about Catherine Legge as well, still has yet to finish the Indianapolis 500, and that 29th place finish is her best career finish at the track.
Yeah, and here's a theme for the rest of the video that you'll see is attrition, 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 because we had 5 cars out of this race by lap 23, and I can't think of a time that that's happened before, besides 97, I believe. And then we get back going, and this is something that we saw all day. These ginormous packs of cars on restarts where it looks like it was a double file restart every single time. And they would spread out 4. Sometimes they were eking 5 wide heading into turn number 1. And it did bite some people like Linus Lundqvist, for instance. And then, you can't edit it together. And then we talked about, moving on in the race, Felix Rosenqvist. He popped a motor on lap 57. Now, surprisingly, we didn't see any others considering we had 4 within the first quarter of the race, realistically. And then we get to some of the more bizarre ones. Colton Herta, he had a spin and, well, it wasn't quite a win today for him, but he did crash the car. It was fixable. They did bring it back. They lost, I think it was 18 laps repairing it, but it was very minimal damage. His teammate Marco Andretti had an almost similar looking incident, except for it had an impact on the rear, and Marco's day was done. So what's your kind of thoughts on that one?
I mean, we talked about this to David when I got back up to the media center. I mean, you looked at what happened to Colton. There was no reason for him to get out of that car. It was a big question on why he did. Because you look at the replay, he only hit the front wing. He could have driven back on that and gotten that wing replaced. Instead, toe back, and they lost 17 laps. Ended up losing, I believe, 30. I think they just parked it. So I joked with you. There's AJ Foyt the 4th, wrecked it in the beginning of the race, tows it back to the garage, brings it back out, tries to run the remainder of the race, and then parks it again after they realize it's in vain. So, and consider this, enter the points lead, he left 4th. He lost a ton of points out of this.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason that they got back out there, because with the high attrition rate, you can at least salvage some decent points by just finishing. Like, if you're 18 laps down, you can still finish 19th, 20th, and salvage something out of a double points paying race. So, for them, it was pretty important to get back going if possible. Now, Andretti, the team as a whole, did have a bunch of issues. We highlighted the issues with Marcus Ericsson. We highlighted the issues with Marco Andretti, with Colton Herta. Well, it wasn't a fault-free day for the 4th Andretti entry of Kyle Kirkwood, as he had a little bit of a whoopsie-do, actually, right here, where he bumped into Isla, and that shot him through his pit box into Ed Carpenter's pit box, right there. And that caused Ed to come to a stop right about here. Yeah. And that cost Kirkwood a drive-through penalty, dropping him a lap back. He would regain it, though, because there was plenty of yellows to regain those laps. However, he did come home with a top 10 finish too, as well. He did rebound, so I think that's a storyline that's worth mentioning. That it was a fantastic rebound for that car, and the one crash damage-free Andretti entry. Ryan Hunter-Reay had a little bit of a interesting ride. We talk about his pass in the grass from 10 years ago when he won here. Well, he tried to mimic the same thing midway through the race on Scott Dixon. It didn't work out, and I'm sure him and Scott have differing opinions on what happened. What I saw was Dixon maintained the lower line on the track, and then Hunter-Reay tried to shoot a gap through the grass. The car hopped, damaged the front wing, spun, and he was very lucky that we did not have another Felix Rosenqvist incident from last year.
And then had to retire because they broke the suspension on the car as well.
Yeah, that as well. So that was day done for the Brian Reinbold entry. The other car with Connor Daly had a very solid first chunk of the race as well, leading for quite a few on strategy, granted. But aside from that, Marco, we already talked about him crashing. Graham Rahal, Kyle Larson had a couple speeding penalties in the pits. And then let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. At one point in the closing stages of the race, we had two different strategies kind of coming together at once, where we had the leader on going in turn one on one strategy who was actually leading the race, and then the leader on the second strategy in turn three. And it was very interesting to see how all this played out. We had Scott Dixon fighting with Alexander Rossi and Pato O'Ward on this side. We had, I can't remember who was fighting on the second strategy, but it was a mighty battle between those cars. The way I can describe this kind of race, this pack racing that we saw today, is it's almost like happy hour for 500 miles. It really, really was. And it had that feel because of the time of day as well. But in the end, it was going to be Dixon, Newgarden, Rossi, and Pato that would benefit the most out of it and be able to kind of break away and have their own battle.
And then let's look into the results so that way we can get towards the end of this video and then wrap up the month of May. Finishing first in the day, obviously, Josef Newgarden goes back-to-back at the Indianapolis 500. First person to do that since his Team Penske teammate Elio Castroneves in 2001 and 2002, arguably. Also, Roger Penske's 20th win at the Speedway, not to mention the fact they repeated history twice. They swept the front row, and then they got 1-2, which is the last person to do that was Penske. So a really good month for Penske. Pato O'Ward, painstaking second, reps his heart out. Same for Scott Dixon. Pulled the strategy perfectly, just did not have the car to fight with the leaders in the end. But he did get past Alexander Rossi, who had a really good race. Rossi was fighting there at the end. A really interesting moment towards the halfway, towards the third quarter of the race, where you saw this old school Chip Ganassi moment where O'Ward and Rossi were back and forth swapping for a majority of the race. Fifth, you're going to find Alex Palou. Sixth, Scott McLaughlin, your pole sitter, who had such a good start, and then it just fell apart in the end. He ran on the front three for about the entire first 3 quarters of the race, and then it all fell apart towards the end. Kyle Kirkwood, give Kyle his flowers. What a race for Kyle Kirkwood. Like you said, to have the nits in the pits, to have go a lap down, to fight his way back and finish 7th in this race, highest finishing Andretti, the third highest finishing Honda in the race. Incredible performance. Driver of the Day award for him. Santino Ferrucci, a really disappointing age. We talked to Michael Cannon after the race, and he said he was pretty upset with Christian Rasmussen because that whatever happened on the racetrack cost him the race. Rinus BK rounds on 9th, and like you said earlier, Connor Daly, a really strong result, finishing 10th. He had a really good day with the off strategy that he pulled and led a good majority of this race from around the first half.
You know, I will actually differ from you on my driver of the day. I'm going to go Stingray Rob. I really am. You cannot take away what an amazing run that kid had today. He led for a giant chunk of the race. Yeah, I beat it on strategy, but you know what? You can't take it away from him.
11th, you're going to find Callum Milot, another driver who could be considered driver of the day. Had a top 20 starting spot, ends up having a weight jacker issue at the start, has to pull into the pits, has to start from the very rear, ran in the back the entire race, and then fought his way towards the end of that race and finished 11th.
And had multiple incidents along the way.
Oh, big time. 12th, you're going to find Christian Rasmussen, a really strong contender for Rookie of the Year. If it wasn't for the issues that Kyle Larson is here, I mean, there's a strong argument, same thing that we've had with Ed Jones, same thing that we've had with others in the past, just over this Rookie of the Year battle. Rasmussen really has a strong argument for it, but it's more likely going to go to Larson. 13th, Christian Lundgaard, a strong result for him. Takuma Sato rounds out 14th, what could possibly be his last race here at the 500. Graham Rahal rounds out 15th. Like you said, Stingray Rob, strong result, had a really good off-strategy sequence. He led a good majority of the opening half of this race as well, was up there for a good, strong majority of this race. 16th, Ed Carpenter 17th. Kyle Larson, heartbreak 18th after his speeding penalty took him out of this race. Roman Grosjean, his first ever finish at the Speedway, 19th. And Elio Castroneves, the 4-time winner, struggling day. He rounds out the top 20.
Yep, and I'm going to point out 21st, Kiffin Simpson. He led for late in the going as well, again on strategy, but he had a pretty decent day. He kept it clean. He was clean the entire month, and you cannot take that away from him.
22nd, you're going to find Augustin Canapino, who I believe finished a lap down. 23rd is going to be Colin Herta, who has scored 30 laps down. It is believed that he might have actually retired. I missed that because you're so focused on the front battle, you didn't see it. Will Power crashed out. He's the first person out at 24th. Marco Andretti crashed out early, 25th. Ryan Hunter-Reay was irate with Scott Dixon and the IndyCar race officials for not giving a penalty after their accident. He rounds out 26th. Felix Rosenquist was upset because of his engine trouble. The struggles of the race continues for him. Strong qualifying results, poor race results. Linus Lundqvist, the struggles continue. 2 wrecked race cars for Chip Ganassi Racing. He ends at 28th. Catherine Legg, heartbreak, has the first time ever really the look of she could finish this race and looks like she can hold her own out there. Engine failure takes her out. Heartbroken on the pit lane. She had to console herself in her car while standing on top of there just waiting for it. And then 30th is Marcus Armstrong. 31st is going to be Tom Blomqvist. 32nd, Pietro Fittipaldi. And 33rd is going to be Marcus Ericsson.
Yeah, I mean, attrition-filled race, long day, very long day. But you know what? You know what's a good way to kind of, sum it up? A word from our sponsors at Peak.
Absolutely.
Protect your vehicle with Peak Original Equipment Technology. Our formulas match the vehicle manufacturer's technology requirements so that we have the perfect match for every vehicle.
So again, thank you guys so much for watching all month long. Again, if you enjoy the content that we've had, be sure to subscribe, like the videos, comment, share the videos everywhere. Be sure to follow us on social media, MightyMac03 on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching all month long and the support that you guys have shown us, not only here in Chicago. Congratulations to Josef Newgarden, Alex Palou, as well as Gage Hura, as well as Dallas Glenn, as well as, funny car was Matt Hagan, and of course, Antron Brown. Thank you to our sponsors, Peak Auto and Drag Race Backer Bonanza, for the support they've shown us all month long. I hope to work with them again in the future. And until next time, whenever that might be, the New England Nationals, but in person, hopefully Bristol. This is Mighty Mac. We'll see you next time.